Hello and welcome to this webinar on customizing content pages using Display Suite in Drupal 8. My name is Ivan Zucek and I'll be presenting this webinar. I've been using Drupal for around 10 years. I think my Drupal.org account has member for, I think it's over now 10 years. And that was personally a bit of a milestone when you go to your Drupal.org account and it says over 10 years. And in that time, I've been a tech lead, I've been a developer, I've also been a front-end developer back in the days when all you had to deal with was jQuery. Simpler times. But enough about me, we are here to learn about Display Suite. And so this is the agenda for today's webinar. We'll start off by looking at what's new in Drupal 8. And I promise that's the only slides. And the rest of the points, and I forgot to add in one extra point, but the rest of them will be part of a massive demo. So I will just share the browser and take you through what Display Suite can do. Now, just before I started this, I forgot to put in a slide which actually explains what Display Suite is. So let me just quickly do that. What is Display Suite? Well, Display Suite allows you to customize entity pages. Now, I do know this title says content pages, and the reason for that is mostly, SEO reasons, because a lot of site builders, especially if you don't touch the code part, you don't really know what an entity is. But essentially, Display Suite allows you to customize a content or entity page directly from the managed display page. Now, if you've done any basic site building, then you would be fully aware of the managed display page where you can move fields up or down or disable them. Display Suite kind of supercharges that page and lets you select layouts with regions, okay? And Display Suite comes with its own set of layouts, but you can write your own if you know how to write code. So that's kind of like the 1 minute explanation on what Display Suite does. Now let's go in. Now let's talk about what's new in Drupal 8. So in Drupal 8, there's a new module called Layout Plugin. And if you were here for my presentation, for my webinar on Page Manager and panels, then I would have explained Layout Plugin then. Essentially what Layout Plugin is that it is a standard way of implementing layouts. Now in Drupal 7, Panels and Display Suite had their own layout system, two separate systems. In Drupal 8, they decided to get together and say, okay, let's fix this once and for all, because it's stupid having two separate layout systems, because if you want to implement a layout in Panels and Display Suite, because often on projects, you would use both Panels and Page Manager and Display Suite, believe it or not. A lot of people think it's either Page Manager or Display Suite, but you can have both, okay? And they do serve different purposes. So Layout Plugin is just a standard way of implementing layouts. Now this module is kind of like a set and forget. There's no UI for it. You just enable it and you're good to go. And that's it, okay? So the next thing that's changed in Drupal 8 is Display Suite had a submodule called Display Suite Form. And this lets you modify the entity form, say the content type form, and you could add the field widgets into particular regions. Well, this has been taken out and they recommend you use field group instead, which is another module. Apparently Display Suite Form was very buggy and they were doing some pretty crazy hacks to get it working, so they decided just use field group instead. And I've used field group and it works pretty well. So field group lets you, as the name suggests, group fields or field widgets. So if you do have a content type with a ton of fields, sometimes the form can be a bit cumbersome, especially for new editors, and field group allows you to simply group fields either with a vertical tab or a tab up the top, or you can even do field sets. So you can have a collapsible region and it just helps you tidy up the content type widgets. So what modules are required to use Display Suite? Well, it's really just two. Display Suite and layout plugin, and that's it. So if you want to use Displacement, just download those two modules, enable Displacement, and you're good to go. I do know that for Drupal 7, there was a Displacement UI module. That's been taken out. It's just Displacement, which is good. It just makes life a lot easier. Okay, now it's demo time. See, I promised limited slides. Okay, so now that you have a good understanding of what Displacement is and also what's changed, let's now jump in and play around with Displacement. Now, I've got my little cue card here of exactly what we're going to demo, because there is a lot actually. Okay, let's jump into it. So let me open up my trusty Firefox. Okay, so this is a stock standard Drupal 8 site. I've just created a test article before starting. And to begin, all you need to do is download Displacement and Layout plugin, and then just enable Display Suite. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and enable it. And it's going to say, you need to enable Layout plugin, which we know. So just give that a second until it installs. Okay, and then to configure Displacement, just go to Structure, and you should see this new link, Displacement. Click on it. So from here, you can go to the Manage Display page of all the entity types, and as I mentioned earlier, Displacement can be used for any entity types, not just content types. So this is just an easy way to go directly to the Manage Display page. But this page, so this Manage Display page, is the exact same one as if you were to go content types. Let me move that. Manage Display. It's the same one, okay? So let's go back to Displacement. All right, perfect. Then up the top here, you have classes, and here you can specify custom CSS classes, and I'll show you how to use this later on. And then from this tab, you can manage the different Displacement fields, and I'll cover this later on because this can be a bit confusing. What is the difference between a Displacement field and a standard field? That I will explain. So let's first enable Displacement on a particular view mode, okay? So let's go to Article and click on Manage Display. And what I personally like to do is I like to use the full content view mode. So this full content view mode is used when you are viewing an article on its page. So like node-1, okay? So let's just turn on full content and click on it up the top. And you can see here we have the standard manage display functionality. You can click and drag, which is okay. You can disable it. You can change the formatters, but that's about it, okay? This page is very, very simple. But if we go down, and you'll see this select a layout, all you need to do is select a layout, and then you get a nice little preview of what the layout will look like. And you can see here that you do have a whole bunch of default layouts that come with Displacement. But if you're using something such as Bootstrap, you can download, I think it's Bootstrap Layout module, and that will give you a bunch of default layouts in different grid sizes. So if you're using Displacement, you can use that. Or if you have a crazy requirement, you can ship your own layout. But in our case, let's just select 2-column layout and click on Save. Always remember Save. I always forget that, and then I realize why it's not working. All right, so straight away, you can see left, right. Okay, so these are the two regions, but you can also see all of these available fields. Now, what are these fields? I don't want to go into detail about them just yet, okay? But these are Displacement fields which are implemented in code, okay? But just ignore that for now. I will cover all of that with when we talk about the fields in general. But straight away you can see that we have a left and a right. So we can easily move fields now into different regions. So let's just move comments into right, and I don't know, image into right as well. And we'll leave body tags and links into in the left region. And let's just click on save. So let me open up another tab, and then I'll go into test article, and you can straight away see our layout has changed, okay? Which is pretty cool. Is this responsive? That is $1 million question. No, it's not. Okay. So see, this is why you would want to use Displace. Okay. So that is honestly most of what Displace can do, but now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. All the little extra things that make that'll make a site builder's life much easier. Okay. So the first thing I want to show you is how to customize wrappers. Okay. And what I mean by that, let me just open up my inspector, and I hope you guys can see the inspector. I did increase the size, and you will see that you have these two divs. Okay. Group left, group right. This markup is implemented by the Displace layout. But what if you want to change div to section? What if you want, div to be header instead of div, or a footer? Okay, how would you do that? Straight away, the site builder in me would say, well, let's just override the layouts and be done with it. But no, you can modify this all within Displace. Okay. So let me just close this and go back to structure, display suite. Oh, sorry, article, full content. And if you click on this custom wrappers, you'll see that you get a drop down for each region. So wrapper left, wrapper right, and then an outer wrapper. So we could change the left to section and the right to, I don't know, a side. And let's change outer wrapper to article, okay? And then if we go back and we have a look at the markup. So first of all, okay, our left is a section, our right is an aside, and if we scroll up, you can see article is the outer wrapper. So without writing any custom code, you can tweak the wrappers, and this will make a site builder's life much easier, especially a front-end site builder, okay, because they can go in there and they have control over the markup. And that's one thing that I've noticed about Drupal 8 in general, is that with the whole tweak system, it's very easy to change Drupal's markup. I know in Drupal 7, for some reason, certain divs were just hard-coded and you couldn't get rid of them, especially with panels in Drupal 7. I remember seeing panel panes where you have literally that much markup, where it's got like panel pane outer, panel pane inner, and things like that. But with Drupal 8, I haven't actually hit a brick wall where I can't change the markup. And that's thanks to the whole tweak system and also stuff like this as well. Okay? Now, changing the wrapper is great, but what if you want to change the CSS classes? Okay? Group left, group right, it's not that semantic. Stupid name, really. What if you want to put in, I don't know, CTA right? Okay? Call to action right, or sidebar right. And then, let's just say this is a huge project and you have a style guide that you need to follow and you need to put in custom classes. How do you do that? Well, Displace can help you there as well. So let's go back to our manage display page. And this time go to custom classes. And you will see that you get this message, you have not defined any CSS classes which can be used on regions. That's because we need to define them. So click on, well, what was that link? Yeah, manage region and field CSS classes. And in this text area, put in your custom classes, okay? So I'll put in CTA right and then add in a pipe and then give it a label. Right, and I'll call this CTA left. Okay. So now if we go back down to custom classes, you can see these extra options. and we can add classes to the layout or to each individual region. So let's do that now. We'll select CTA left for class for left and CTA right for class for right. And then if we refresh, we should see our custom class, CTA left and CTA right. And believe it or not, I actually use this functionality a lot more than changing the wrappers for some reason, okay? And yeah, being able to add arbitrary CSS classes has saved me so many times in the past. Okay, so we've looked at how to enable Display Suite. We've looked at wrappers and CSS classes. Now let's look at the next big thing in Display Suite, and that's Display Suite fields, okay? So let's go back to structure. Well, actually, let's open up another tab so we can keep track of everything. Let's go to Display Suite, fields, okay? So from here, you can control custom fields, okay? Now, as I mentioned, these aren't standard fields, okay? You cannot store content. There's no widget. It's pretty much just a glorified formatter, and that's it. So just understand that, you can't store content and you don't have a widget, all right? So the first one, add a block field. I think you can kind of figure out what this is used for. This allows you to expose a block as a Display Suite field. So if you want to embed, let's say, a view in your Display Suite layout, well, all you need to do is go into views, create it as a block view, and then create a field, a Display Suite block field, and then simply select that view, and that's it. And then that way you can easily embed the block view into your Display Suite layout. So just click on block view, and I'll call this recent content. And from block, you can select all your available blocks. So some of these are already views. So I do know recent content is a view, and the rest of them are, I think, hard-coded, possibly. Anyway, so let's just select recent content. Then under entities, you select under which entity. Now, for which entity this block should go under. Because sometimes, okay, especially if you're implementing a block view, you may have a custom, contextual filter where you are loading the entity based off the URL, and then in that case, this block field can only go on nodes, and that's it. Okay, so just be aware of that. Sometimes a block may not be applicable to taxonomy terms or a user entity, but you can select multiple ones if you need to. Okay. Then the next section, this is limit field. This allows you to limit the field to specific bundles and view modes. And what I mean by this is, if we want to limit this recent content field to only articles, well, we'll have to enter article, pipe, and then a star. So this means that it'll be available only on the article content type, but on all view modes. If for some reason you want to allow it on all content types, but only the full content view mode or the teaser view mode, then you'll put in a star, and then teaser, and something like, or full. If you want to allow it only on teaser or full content view modes. Most of the time, I just leave this empty, but it can be useful if you do have a lot of custom fields, okay? Okay, so let's just leave that as it is. Click on save. You can configure the block settings if you want to, and click on save. Okay, so now let's go back to our manage display page. Let's refresh, and we should see a recent content. Perfect. So let's just move that into the right region and click on save. And let me close this, and I'll refresh, and you can see our view here. Perfect, okay? All right, now let's go back to fields. The next one, add a token field. So this allows you to add in tokens into the field content, and then Drupal's token system would simply render those tokens and display them. Now, for people who don't know, token, okay, a token can be something as simple as this, so node :title. If Drupal sees this, of course, you need to set up tokens to render this field. But if you were to add this in as a token, it'll grab the node title. So these are kind of like placeholders or shortcodes if you're familiar with WordPress. And the token system, the API is in Drupal, but the UI, so the user interface, isn't. Okay. So let me just create a custom token, select node, and I'll put in title, and then I do know that this token exists, okay, because it's the most common one. It's the most commonly one used. But let me just save this. You may have noticed that there's no way of actually seeing what are all the available tokens. You know, where are they? What if you want to select a token for a particular field? Okay. Now, the best way to see all the available tokens is by downloading the token module. Okay. So, now let me enable it this way. So let me go into modules, search for token. I've already downloaded it, just need to install it. And just wait a few seconds. Okay, so now that I've downloaded the token module, you should see this browse available tokens. Just click on that, and you'll get this available tokens modal pop-up. And then here you can drill down into the available tokens. But be aware, this available tokens modal pop-up isn't smart enough to, figure out what tokens are available. So what I mean by that is you can still select user or say taxonomy term, but because this is a node, these term tokens won't work. So just be aware of that. This shows you all the available tokens. It doesn't show you contextually what's available based off this selection. A lot of beginner site builders think that this available token system is smart and it'll only show you what's available. Well, it doesn't do that. So this modal pop-up can really help you figure out what's available and what's not. Okay, so let's just click on save and let's refresh, and we should see custom token, which is pretty cool. And then we save that, and if we refresh here, we should see it right here. Well, you can kind of see it, but there it is. Okay. So the next field type is create a copy of a display suite field. That's a lovely named field type. Create a copy of a display suite field. Just rolls off your tongue. So this lets you, as the name suggests, it lets you create a copy of a display suite field. So what I mean by that is, let's go back into manage display. And I said that I'll talk about these fields later on, and now is later on. So Display Suite allows you to implement fields in code, all right? And all of these are implemented in code. So if you were to look in the Display Suite module, you will find, I think, a Display Suite base field class or something like that. And all of these fields are implemented in code. Now, what if you want to have two author fields? Okay, let's just add in an author field in the right region. But what if you want to have an author in the left region? How would you do that? In Drupal 7, you would just create another field, essentially. But in Drupal 8, you can create a copy of a Display Suite field. Okay, so let's just do that. Let's just save this. So we have author here. But then if we go to this page, let's create an author 2. All right. I think you should name it better, but anyway. Let's select a node, but also be aware that you can select other fields, so other block fields as well. So you can have duplicate block fields. Okay, you can see our block field here, and you can see our custom token. Okay, let's just select author. And then if we go here, we should see author 2. Now, at first, I was like, okay, why the hell would you want to make a copy of a display suite field? Until I had a reason for it. And straight away I thought, oh, just create a copy of it. Because there was some funny requirement where I had to have duplicate fields. And this really, really helped. So if we now go to the home, to the test article, you'll see admin, okay, the author fields. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention, okay, this token field, all right, this token field can be used to put in static content. You could essentially just put in a whole bunch of content, okay? We could put this in, hit save, and be done with it. You know, if you want to put static content in, you can do that, okay? But be aware, okay? With the new configuration management, this field is considered content. So if for some reason you have this requirement where the client says, oh, we just want to put some hard-coded content in here, and they say the good old, well, this content will never change. First of all, never believe a client that says content will never change. Content will always change, okay? But if you were to hard code, essentially you are hard coding the content with the field, and when you run a configuration export, this will be exported out with the rest of your configuration. But then if you come back, say a month later on your production site, and then you change the content, okay, you will have an overridden config file. So the solution for this, I believe, is to just create a custom block. So go into custom block library and create a custom block, because the custom block is treated as content and it's never exported out in code. And then if you need to modify it, well, then you can easily come here and modify the block, and then create a block field, and then embed the custom block type into your display suite field. And that's a much better solution than using token field and hard coding it. Because as soon as you put in static content and then eventually modify it, your configuration will be overridden. And then if you have some type of continuous integration or some deployment procedure that simply reverts everything, well, then you could essentially lose any changes done directly on production. Unless you're willing to always make that change in code and then deploy that out, then it's perfectly fine. But that's just something to be aware of. Okay, so we've looked at the display suite fields, okay? Now let's look at a submodule. And this submodule is pretty cool, okay? So let's go to extend. And then let me search for switch view mode, okay? So this submodule called Display Suite Switch View Mode allows you to switch the view mode, okay? So let's just install that, and I'll show you what I mean. All right, give that a second. All right. So if we have a look at this article layout, which we've been working on, there's only one version of the full content view mode. Okay. Now, what if you want to have multiple layouts for the article content type? Now, in the past, I would essentially create different content types, because that's the whole point of a content type. You can create multiple content types. But then you could have a situation where you end up with 5 or 6 content types called basic article, premium article, complex article, article with sidebar. And honestly, from a site building standpoint, that is a terrible thing, because essentially they are articles, but maybe you want to give editors the ability to select a different layout for the article content type. And this is where the Display Suite switch view mode comes in, okay? So if we edit the test article, you will see this new option. Let me move this up, called Display Settings. And this lets you switch the view mode for this particular article. So we may use full content as the default, but then as a site builder, you could create full content with sidebar, or full content with hero promo image or something like that. And then an editor can come in and say, well, actually, this article has a header image, a massive, hero image. Let's select the full content hero image view mode, and that's it. Okay. So this is a good site building tool, as well as a good editing tool. Okay, because it gives flexibility to the editor where they can choose what they want. Now, be aware, another be aware, is that this only works for nodes, so content types, okay? You could implement something like this for other entities, but out of the box, this module only works for content types, okay? But if we were to select, say, so if you were to let's go to view modes, and let's create another view mode, and let's call this full content sidebar, but you can call it whatever you want, okay? And then let's save this, and then we go back into our, let's go back into default, and then let's enable full content sidebar. And then just come along here, modify it. Let's give this a one column, okay? All right, and then if we go, where is this? All right, let's go back to our test article. And then if we go to display settings, and then select full content sidebar, you can see that now everything's in a single column, okay? But it really comes down to the site builder. Create a bunch of usable view modes, or you might want to call them layouts, because editors don't quite understand Drupal jargon. That's one thing I've learned. Just, use better terminology, just call it a layout or something. Then you can, then you essentially could come up with a good set of layouts, which then your editor can select and use for whatever they want. Now, this functionality is similar to variants in panels and page manager, but variants, well, actually, variants, you cannot, I don't think you can select a variant, a specific variant from the node edit page unless you're using Panelizer. I know you can do that in Drupal 7 Panelizer, but with Drupal 8, you cannot do it. But you essentially could, put in that functionality yourself, just by creating a custom field just creating a custom field as, say, a drop down, and then the editor can select what layout they want, and then you can write a bit of custom code. I think you can implement the entity type view mode hook or something, and then just switch out the view mode, and that's it. Of course, there's a bit more to it, but that's kind of just off the top of my head how you could do it. Okay, let's now, the final thing we need to do, and we're going, in time-wise, we're going pretty well, is overriding templates, okay? So let's go back to, okay, let me first change this back to full content, and make sure that's full content, perfect, okay. And let's go back to full content, left, right. Okay, cool. So if you want to figure out what templates to override is just under the current layout, have a look at the template suggestions. And this gives you a good insight into what Drupal will look for when you are trying to override your templates. So you could override the layout template specifically for this Node 1 article. If you really, really want to do that, I don't recommend you do that, but sometimes, we all do it, especially when you just have to make one change. And especially if you are using, say, a basic page for the homepage and the homepage will always be Node 1, well then by all means, go ahead and do it. But then you have other things where you can specify, okay, I want to override the template for the node entity, for articles, and for articles that are using the full content view mode. You can do that. Okay? So to override, let's go into, let me just close all this stuff. Let's go into Display Suite, templates, and I do know that this one is DS2col, so that would be here. Okay, so this is the layout we are using. But just a quick side note, remember how we were able to add in extra classes? Well, that's because of this twig method, and the reason why we were able to change the different wrappers was because of this. Okay, so just be aware, if you are going to modify this, just be aware that you can change the wrappers as I showed you, because it's not that easy to change the wrappers here. You would have to actually pull out functionality out of Display Suite. And in the past, I have worked in a team where I came in kind of halfway through the project and I saw that they were using Display Suite, and I had to actually change a wrapper for a region, exactly what I showed you earlier. And I thought, well, that's fine. I can just use Display Suite for that. I went in there, I came here, switched it, save, and then I went back in here and I was figuring out, why the hell isn't it changing? And then it wasn't until I noticed that they overrode the templates and they pretty much ripped all this stuff out and just put in div. And straight away I thought, oh, you serious? They actually took out functionality and made my life as a fellow site builder harder. Okay, so just be aware of that. Display Suite gives you this functionality, and just try and utilize it, because I ended up spending probably an hour, trying to debug this, and why the hell isn't this working? So that's just a bit of a heads up. So let's just grab this, copy. And what I'll do is I'll paste this into the core Bartek theme. Of course, do not do this on a production site. Never modify anything in core, but just because I'm doing this for the video and this isn't a live site, it's perfectly okay. So let's just put this in, and I'll put a nice little header, custom, can't even spell custom template. And of course, rebuild your site cache. What? Having trouble typing today, and that's because I had to get up at 5 in the morning to do this webinar. Okay, so that's all. Rebuild. Let's just reload the page. Let's give it a bit more time because it needs to rebuild all the caches, and you can see our custom template. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of how to modify templates. Okay, it's pretty easy. It's the same as modifying really any template in Drupal, and if you were here for the page manager and panels, it's the same way. You modify templates the same way. The final thing I'll show you, and I forgot to put a slide for this, Bootstrap Layout Drupal, is if you want to use Bootstrap, okay, there are a few of them. Anyway, so if you want to use Bootstrap Layout, I think this one's it. Yeah. As I said earlier, if you are using Bootstrap, check out this Bootstrap Layout, Bootstrap Layouts. This actually utilizes the layout plugin, so there's only one module. Okay, and as as you can see here, it actually mentions that this project is a combination of Drupal 7 Display Suite Bootstrap Layout and Panels Bootstrap Layout. See, in Drupal 7, you had to have 2 different modules, but for Drupal 8, there's only 1. And just another thing I probably didn't mention it about Layout Plugin is that Layout Plugin started off in Drupal core, and then they realized that, okay, it's not getting utilized, so they took it out and created a contrib module. But for Drupal 8.3, which is scheduled to be released in March, April, for Drupal 8.3, it's back in Drupal core. Okay, so it started off live in Drupal core, then it was moved to contrib, and then now it's back in Drupal core. And I do apologize for the sun. The sun's coming right in. I was hoping the sun would hold off. It's just that it's 8:15 Sydney time, and the sun's coming right in. And I don't have a blind. Anyway, so yeah, just be aware of that. You may not even need Layout Plugin from Drupal 8.3 onwards, which is good because it's just one less module to deal with, okay? But we're Drupal people. We love putting in 10,000 modules. Okay, all right, so that is about it. I mean, let me just stop sharing my screen and let's ask questions. Okay, so the first question is, okay. So the first question is, does Paragraph also use Layout Plugin? It will only use Layout Plugin if you are modifying, if you are using Display Suite on Paragraphs. But out of the box, Paragraphs does not require Layout Plugin. Layout Plugin is just for Panels and Display Suite. But you can modify your paragraphs and have Display Suite customize them the same way as you would for any content type. And I've done this in Drupal 7. Okay, I actually use Panelizer in Drupal 7 on paragraphs, and that actually worked pretty well. But paragraphs. I am planning to do a paragraphs webinar. I just need to figure out exactly what I'm going to talk about because paragraphs is a massive, you can do a lot with paragraphs. Yeah, I don't know. So the question is, when Layout Plugin is in core, will it affect the module or the modules that are installed or just change in core? I'm not quite sure because essentially I don't know what actually happens. That is a good question because, yeah, I don't know. And this is another question, and this is something that's often arising with contrib modules that are now moving back into core, because a lot of contrib modules have moved into core. And you have a similar issue now with the content moderation versus, workbench moderation, sorry. So content moderation, which is an experimental module in Drupal 8, is pretty much a copy of workbench moderation. And I'm not quite sure what's required. Hopefully, it should be, yeah, you may have to just disable it and then update to Drupal 8.3, and then your system should work. But hopefully, Display Suite and Panels and Page Manager just kind of work out of the box. I'm not quite sure what type of migration will be available, but essentially there is no content to migrate. It is just a few classes, and that's it. That's all what you need to deal with. You just need to deal with classes. So if you are using Display Suite and or Page Manager, and of course your site is 8.2, when you upgrade to 8.3, just be aware of that. You just test things locally. I do know that they do say, oh yeah, we offer backwards compatibility, but I often make sure I test it out. All right, does Display Suite work with RTL, so right-hand side languages? I don't know. I personally haven't dealt with any. I haven't worked on any websites that deal with right-hand side languages. In Australia, we don't deal with, which is a bit annoying because we don't often deal with multilingual websites. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure. I don't really see that being a problem, but I would check in the issue queue. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, that's interesting. So paragraphs doesn't. Okay, well that's good to know. That's good to know. I always thought paragraphs. Interesting. Okay. All right. So any other questions before we finish up? We're only at 40. Oh, good. We're at 45 minutes. All right. So any further questions? Another great presentation. Well, thank you. Thank you. I do enjoy these presentations. Trust me, I actually enjoy these presentations a lot more than I like writing content. Well, writing content's fun, but it can sometimes be a bit tedious when you're writing the content and proofreading and this and that. Presentations is just, bam, get up nice and early and then just do the presentations. So I do have a few presentations lined up, a few more webinars. I will be moving over to a fortnightly schedule from pretty much today. So there won't be a webinar next week. There will be a webinar the following week. And I do have a few ideas. I think the next one is search. I don't know. I have to check. But I do want to talk about... okay, sorry. There's just another question. I will rewatch. Okay, yes. This will be uploaded onto YouTube. And what I'll do is I will upload it. I will fix all this stuff up, upload it to YouTube, and I'll send you all an email. And in the email, there'll be a link to the YouTube channel. And then tomorrow, there will be an actual post on WebWash linking to the YouTube channel. So you can, watch it. So I do have a few, I hope, exciting webinars for the future. So one of them is paragraphs. I've talked a lot about paragraphs on WebWash, and I do think it's a pretty cool system. Then search as well. I know search has changed in Drupal 8 a bit, and also look at search API. And one thing I kind of took for granted is that I recently tried to help a friend add in search on a WordPress site, and there's just nothing out there compared to Search API. Search API is an amazing piece of software. And then I want to look at, so search, paragraphs. There's also, I want to look at, say, food tables. So all of these like responsive tables, which are pretty cool. And essentially they are just libraries that you can integrate into Drupal. So like data tables and food tables, which helps you create nice responsive tables. That's pretty cool. And anything else that you guys want. So if you guys do have any ideas, please just send them across. Just reply to any email that I send. Okay, so the question is, I am new to panels and Display Suite. What would be the best to learn? Well, so yeah. Panels, so people often try to compare panels and Display Suite. And I always like to say that panels can do exactly what Display Suite can do, but it can do more things. And what I mean by that is Page Manager and panels, because now in Drupal 8, things have slightly changed. It's not really just panels doing everything. A lot of what panels did in Drupal 7 has been moved over to Page Manager. So Page Manager does a lot of the heavy lifting, and panels itself is just a variant type. Now, I do have a presentation about that, about panels and Page Manager, if you want to learn about the nitty-gritty of it. But Page Manager allows you to create arbitrary pages, so you can create any custom page at whatever URL you want, /myawesome-course. You can create it like that. And then Display Suite only allows you to modify content pages or entity pages. And the best way to learn would be to just download and install them and play around with them. Display Suite, so Page Manager and panels, I don't think they have a stable release of Page Manager, or maybe they do. I think they have a beta version of Page Manager and panels. One of them is like beta or alpha, but Display Suite has a full stable release for Drupal 8. So I've used Display Suite on projects for Drupal 8 and it's stable. It works. So I would first play around with Display Suite. Okay, essentially what I've shown you here, that's pretty much 99.9% of how you would use Display Suite. Okay, so I would recommend that you just download it, play around with it, see if it works well for your project. and then play around with Page Manager and panels and see which one works well. But you can use both. I don't know why people are so, Page Manager or panels versus Display Suite, we can only use one. And I've had this conversation at many Drupal meetups in Sydney. And you have site builders that are very dogmatic about things, where they absolutely hate panels or love it. And that's it. And I've got a friend that even now, when I chat to him over Slack, he goes, I hate panels. This site's using panels. Why are they using panels? And I go to him, it's like, okay, so what's the problem? Most of the time you can fix it up, but I do understand that panels can be hard to use at first because the UI is totally different. Whereas with Display Suite, you are utilizing the managed display page. So it's not a huge change. Whereas with Page Manager and panels, it's a brand new user interface, and then you need to deal with variants. But once you get over that hurdle, I do think Page Manager and panels is worth it, is worth learning, because once you get over the hurdle and can see just how powerful it is, you'll be blown away. Now, this presentation is about Display Suite, not Page Manager and panels. But with anything in Drupal, if you want to learn it, download it, play around with it, look in the code, and just rip things apart. That's what I do. And another thing, have a look at distributions. I don't know if you want to figure out, if you want to play around with panels, have a look at the Lightning distro. Let me find it. Lightning Drupal distribution. Yeah. I don't know if they use Display Suite, but this distribution, I'll pop it in the chat. This distribution is maintained by Aqua, and it utilizes Page Manager, panels, and also media. And I did a presentation last week about media. So if you want to see how all of that's been set up in a distribution, I would highly recommend you download the distribution and play around with it and then just dissect it. Because if there's one thing I've learned is that distros are great in figuring out how things are made and how things are done. And you learn a lot from it. But Display Suite is pretty quick and easy to learn. So that's my 2 cents worth. So any other questions before we finish up? Final questions? No? Going once? Going twice? All right. Well, thanks a lot. No, thank you. No, thanks for everyone who attended. I really, really appreciate it. It's been fun the last 3 webinars. And the reason why I've been able to do it on a weekly basis is because I'm kind of between contracts, and then starting from next week, I've got a new contract lined up. And so that's why I'm moving over to a fortnightly. But I really, really enjoy these webinars, and thanks for everyone for coming. Because all of you guys make it worth it. Because if you guys aren't here, then I'm just talking to myself, really. All right. Well, if you guys have any other questions, just reply to the email that I send you. All emails come to my personal email address. That's just ivan@webwash.net. So if you have any other questions, just reply back, and I'll do my best to help you out. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and I will see you all in perhaps 2 weeks' time when we do the next webinar. All right. Thank you. See you later.